Hi there, nice to see you again. So, if Antonio Macrì can be called the first major boss of the Ndrangheta of the 20th century, who practically dictated its history between the 1930s, 40s and the mid-1970s, there is another prominent figure who remained in the shadows until the killing of the Siderno boss himself. And he has taken on increasing importance since the 1980s, replacing the role that had been held by Macrì. He belongs to the same family and is the one who runs the same gang both in Calabria and abroad. Today we're talking about Cosimo Commisso, a boss born in 1950, the son of Francesco Commisso, who was Macri's right-hand man, from whom he inherited precisely the Macrì-Commisso family organisation upon Macri's death. Francesco himself was supposed to take Macri's place after his death, but due to subsequent events it was determined that Cosimo would have become the new head of the Siderno locale, or gang. Following his rise to power, one of his first actions was to continue his association with the Canadian Siderno Group, thanks to his family connections with one of the members belonging to the North American group, his cousin Rocco Remo Commisso. Its importance overseas also increased after the direct takeover in the United States. And here Cosimo arrived as a replacement for Vincenzo Macrì, son of Antonio, who was arrested shortly after his father's departure, effectively leaving exclusive room for the Commisso family to expand, with the Macrì gang slowly losing relative importance in the Ndrangheta world. Both with his arrival in the United States and with the help of Rocco Remo and later his own involvement in person in Canada, Cosimo also gained significant prominence throughout North America during the 1980s, carrying on the international drug trafficking, the money laundering and racketeering activities that were the main activities of the Sidernese clan back in those days. But all this was not, however, what most distinguished Cosimo Commisso's life. What had greater relevance, both in a historical context and for the very continuation of the boss's life, was the war between the Commisso family and the Costa family. At first an ally of the larger family run by Cosimo, and then seeking to have its own independent role, starting in the mid-1980s and onward. Now the clash between what were by then two separate Ndrini went down in history as a Siderno Faida and characterised the period from January 1987 to August 1991. The conflict began with the killing of Luciano Costa, brother of turncoat Giuseppe, as well as then head of the Ndrina, as revenge related to a weapons theft that took place in Cosimo Commisso's house. A few months later, Cosimo himself, along with his cousin Antonio, were targets of a failed ambush, in which the Costa family tried to eliminate them but failed in their intent. Over the course of these 4 years, there were many attacks on members of the Commisso and Costa families, and several were also casualties, such as, in chronological order, Vincenzo Costa, Cosimo Commisso, not the boss of Siderno, but a family member of the same name, Luciano Commisso, and Giovanni Costa. Giovanni Costa was also the one who, after fleeing to Canada following the arrest issued against him in Italy, exported this same feud between the two Ndrini also to North America. Another important name among the gangsters who were killed in this feud was that of Vincenzo Figliomeni, whose killing took place at the hands of Tommaso Costa, as revealed by turncoat Giuseppe Costa. Now this murder led the Figliomeni family to remain allied with the Commisso, rather than switch to the Costa side. The feud ended after more than 4.5 years, with at least 6 murders, of which at least 5, in addition to attempted killings, were blamed on Cosimo Commisso, who in 1993 was arrested on charges of being the head of a mafia clan, following the conclusion of the Siderno Group operation, from which the name of the international group also stemmed. It was only 5 years later, in 1998, that he was sentenced to life in prison for the facts described above. And at this point, Antonio Commisso took over the leadership of the family, which he maintains it to this day, despite the fact that he was arrested in 1999 and still remains in prison. And with the life imprisonment imposed on Cosimo, his story seems to have come to an end, given that it is impossible to rule both the Siderno gang in Calabria as well as activities outside the Italian borders. Well, the big surprise happened roughly a decade later. In fact, in January 2019, the Naples Court of Appeals overturned his 1998 conviction, consequently freeing Cosimo Commisso from life imprisonment and requiring that the boss to be released from prison immediately, even though he'd actually been under house arrest for 4 years. Well, thanks in part to the efforts of Commisso's lawyers, it was concluded that Cosimo himself was not at the top of the Siderno clan. And this is because, following multiple wiretaps, the Italian Supreme Court was able to confirm that since 1991, Giuseppe Commisso and not Cosimo had been at the head of the criminal organisation. Moreover, it was discovered that following the death of Domenico Ndrangheta, head of the clan until December 1988, the Commisso family had never formalised the appointment of a new boss, to avoid any such appointee becoming a top target of the Costa family. And so, for this reason, in 1991, Cosimo could not be considered the actual head of the organisation, and consequently not even the instigator of the multiple committed and failed murders that occurred that year. The lack of factual basis for his conviction resulted in him being let free, albeit briefly, since he was jailed again in late 2019 for mafia association, following a subsequent investigation. Well, that's it for now. I hope you're enjoying this series. The Ndrangheta is one heck of a complex organisation, but equally fascinating in its own ways. So why not let us know if you agree? We do read and we do enjoy each of your comments, so do keep them coming. And until next time, ciao!